You've been behind some of the most popular, most successful podcasts throughout the whole world.
I was the third team member on Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson.
So my assistant, Ben, he's Mormon, and they're amazing.
There's a meaning crisis. And in the UK, a lot of people are turning back to their faith. Content creators who are against the church and overly cynical. You know, stakes are closing and the church is dying in the UK. And it's like, well, didn't you hear about the first temples to be announced in the UK since 1998? A historian and writer says, you know, I can't believe someone well-versed in podcasting and all this would believe this random kid, Joseph Smith. And we were talking about faith with these attendants. They go, what are you? Are you Anglican, Ben? I say, no, I'm actually a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they started having a real go at me. You've joined an American cult, you know. And then the journalist stands up. Don't you dare speak like that about Ben. This was someone who, a year before, had never had any interaction with a Latter-day Saint. I'm hearing online from these antagonistic content creators that the church is dying and people are leaving in droves. We're seeing baptisms like we've never seen them before. One of the biggest survey companies in the UK. They've been picking up trends about belief in God among younger Britons.
Wow, 16 to 45.
16 to 45. Wait till we get to church attendance. That's the big one. This is an extraordinary time to be a Latter-day Saint in England and in the world. There are two Irish podcasters who do a great job there, but apart from that, I'm the only pro Latter-day Saint podcaster in, I think, the whole of Europe. There might be some of Europe, but especially in the UK. But there are a lot going the other way. There are a lot of people trying to attack and decrease faith, and they have all of these narratives. Faith in Europe is dying, people are leaving the church in droves. And that's not just from the Latter-day Saint community, that's Christianity in general. And I think for a time it was true. And I think obviously COVID accelerated some people's faith journeys away from Christianity and specifically the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But that was just a temporary blip. And there's a much greater work going on, which includes the death of this terrible new atheism movement that came along that really provided no answer, no solution to the problem that they created. They effectively left... You know that business term of dead catting?
No.
They effectively left a dead cat on the table. And a dead cat is like, don't just leave me a problem without a solution.
What am I going to do with this cat?
Yeah. And I think Gen X really bought into that. You know, my parents' generation is one of the most secular in history. But when you look at all of the statistics, especially from this year, it paints a hugely different picture. So this is I'm an evangelist for the church specifically growing in the UK, but this is wider Christianity. And I've got my iPad here because I want to get the stats right. Stephen,
that's fine with me.
They are mind-blowing. I'm going to read these out for you. So earlier this year, The Times, a big newspaper, did a big survey with a sample size of about 10,000, which is huge, that found that members of Gen Z were less likely to identify as atheists than their middle-aged parents and more likely to consider themselves spiritual. So that's one. Second, YouGov.
Which is opposite of what people would ever assume would have been the case. They assumed that the next generation was going to be like, well, the nuns research, right?
Exactly.
But it's not that at all.
No.
Yeah.
So YouGov, one of the biggest survey companies in the UK, they do a biannual tracker. They've been picking up trends about belief in God among younger British citizens since 2021. Listen to this. The proportion of 18 to 24s claiming such belief was 16% in August 2021. 16. A year later, it climbed to 19%. A year later, 34%.
What?
Then by August 2024, 39%. Before in January 2025, 45%. And the next youngest age group, 25 to 49, showed a very similar, more modest, but still really notable increase over the same period from 21% to 33%, but 16% to 45% in the space of 5 years.
That's how much it grew.
Belief in God among 18 to 24-year-olds in Britain.
Wow, 16 to 45.
16 to 45. Wait till we get to church attendance. That's the big one. But you can go to America too.
There was a little bit of a dip, and people probably exaggerated that, and you're saying it was a blip, and now you're starting to see it go up.
Yeah, and what you have to recognize is too is why is this happening? And there's another study that was done that showed that the midlife crisis has effectively disappeared because they measure well-being and ill-being. And they found that now for the younger generation, the midlife crisis, there's no evidence that it exists because the peak of their challenges with mental health and ill-being in general is in their 20s and in their youth. And then it slopes down as they age. So actually, as they age, they're thinking, oh, finally, it's getting easier, whereas that's never been the case before.
Interesting. What have you already looked this up of what are some of the variables that are causing it to be different?
I think my assumption, and you can find the report because it was a popular study, but you've got the financial pressure, the lack of home ownership now. In the UK, I don't know how it is.
That's already hitting now, earlier in life versus later.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So beforehand, one of the highest killers of men under 50, especially between 40 and 50, is suicide, taking their own life. And so you see that the pressure in that generation is in that time period, where for us coming forward, all of those pressures front load to a heavy 20s where we're saddled with debt very early on, where the cost of living is increasingly high, home ownership is low. And so I think, and we've said this word, it's always become a buzzword, there's a meaning crisis. And in the UK, a lot of people are turning back to their faith.
Because of the crisis.
Because of this crisis.
And that generally is what happens with midlife crises too, right? And so that age group that people assumed would be a certain way, because they're hitting these roadblocks sooner, they have a decision to make. I'm going to turn to God.
Yes.
That's what's happening.
And they're trying it out, and they're finding that it is bringing that satisfaction. So I'll share this one. We had this huge report done in the UK called The Quiet Revival. Oh. And it's a beautiful report. I'd recommend everyone going and looking at it. So last month in the UK, this big study with enormous sample size, I think it was 13,000 respondents, found that young people, and especially young men, were showing unprecedented interest in Christianity. Reported that this is amazing, this is church attendance. In 2018, just 4% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they attended church at least monthly. Today, this has risen to 16%, and young men increased from 4% to 21%.
So men are even more.
Yeah, so church, basically what it's saying is church attendance among young people has quadrupled, and for men, it has quintupled in the last 4 years.
And so what is this? Where's this narrative coming from? Like, is it because it happened and they're still holding on to it, or what? What is it?
Yeah, so if you take the specific Latter-day Saint arguments of content creators who are against the church and overly cynical, they will look at the closure of stakes and the closure of wards. So this is something that's happening in the UK, is the amalgamation. And I'm sure many of your listeners have probably heard. I helped with some tours over the summer with visiting, and they're saying, well, we hear that, stakes are closing and the church is dying in the UK. And it's like, well, didn't you hear about the temples being announced in the UK? The first temples to be announced in the UK since 1998.
So what's really going on? Because I know it here in Utah, for example, right? They're just like, I think it's a similar thing where the demographics are changing, the neighborhoods are changing. You have a higher density, and then those families grow, and then now you have mom and dad, empty nest, and so you have a ward that might have been. I mean, this may not be always the case, right? But I think just those communities are just shifting in demographics, right? And so the numbers are lower, so they might reduce a ward, but it didn't necessarily mean that those people left the church, right?
There are a number of aspects to it. I would say the key ones are, if you're introducing temples, you need people to serve in the temples. And at present, a lot of places in Europe where the church is, the wards are about 100 strong, each one. And so you
100
have
strong?
100 people attending generally. Consistently. And you have in every ward, and people in the UK will be listening and saying, yep, there's usually a group of very active people who will cycle between all of the callings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like
so if you're an active
20%,
member, if you're an active member, you will hold a calling of responsibility, and you'll be burdened with that. And as soon as you're released from that, you'll go into another one, you'll go into stake, and so you need to free up people to actually serve in the temples. And so the idea of closing a stake is to say, okay, instead of having these small regions with stakes where everyone's really busy with their callings, let's create a center of strength where people are free to actually live out their discipleship and serve in the temple and attend the temple frequently, because I can't go to the temple because I've got my elders quorum presidency meeting, and then I'm ministering, and then I'm running the ward activity, then I'm taking my kids to this dance youth activity.
So they're making the wards bigger so that they frees people up, because pretty consistently the wards are around about that 100 size, right?
Absolutely.
So if you make them smaller, you get in wards that are bigger, right? So then there's more opportunity to have more free time.
Yeah, and I was with someone for lunch yesterday, and they said, we've got 80 youth in our ward in Utah. I was like, what? I've never heard of that. I don't know if that's common in Utah, but that's what he said.
In some places, depending on the demographic.
Yeah, and for us, it's very inconsistent, because you have areas that are very industrial. You have city areas where it's very expensive to live. So you don't know. So again, closing stakes and amalgamating stakes together strengthens the rising generation. And that's a key focus. That is the main focus. And that's been confirmed when I've spoken to leaders of the church in the UK, that is the intention, to create these areas of strength that strengthen the rising generation to be able to enjoy living out their faith.
So have you seen any of the numbers of what the actual numbers are of the membership? Do you know of those? Are you even able to share those?
They have. So I mean, it's there or thereabouts 180,000
in Europe,
in the UK. In the UK. So I don't know the specific figures. I know that it's grown. I know that year on year it's growing, especially since COVID. And anecdotally, I've never witnessed anything like it. And what I've been told is that the growth that's being experienced is nothing like we've seen since the 70s with the Osmond Mania, which is when the church really grew. I'll give you an example. Last year, a local family got baptized, which is really unique in our ward. And then last week, a girl who is 18 years old got baptized of her own accord, no family members involved. In fact, I think some of her family were against it, but she wanted to join the church, and she's really strong. It's quite amazing and inspiring to see. And at her baptism, a 25-year-old woman showed up whose grandmother, who has since passed, she remembered being a member of the church, and she was interested. And now she's gone to university, all of this, and she's come back and she's thought, I'd quite like to learn about the church too. So again, of her own accord, she's come and is learning with the missionaries. And we're seeing I keep hearing these stories from many different wards, and I speak and I say, I'm hearing online from these antagonistic content creators that the church is dying and people are leaving in droves. What's your personal experience in your ward? Because I can't attend every ward.
Yeah.
And they're saying the same. They're saying, we're seeing miracles. We're seeing baptisms like we've never seen them before. We're seeing a real excitement. We're seeing temples being announced. So let me say this to people who believe the alternative narrative is, this is an extraordinary time to be a Latter-day Saint in England and in the world. But I'm from England, and
that matters.
It is extraordinary.
Well, the church is global,
That's it, yeah.
It's global, and I think, but England is so foundational of the church history. I mean, a lot of what kept the church afloat when everything happened, the succession with Joseph Smith, wasn't a lot of the membership from England that migrated from England is what kept the church alive?
I think
historically,
something like, I may be wrong with this, but I think
the early church members weren't many of them from England.
I think by 1860, 50% of the Utah population were English emigrants. Wow. And there were about 80 to 100,000 people who came from the UK. So when you consider that from 1840 to 1960, there were about 6,000 UK church members. Like, they really all did get up and leave, apart from a few. And then the Osmonds came along and other things happened where the church really boomed in the UK and grew. But yeah, those early members, Elder Holland can often be heard to say, these members temporarily and spiritually saved the church. And I feel really proud of that.
I wonder how many people that live in Europe right now are somehow connected to some of those saints and don't even know it.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? That might be coming back, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So let's go back for you. I'm just curious, before all of this, right? Before everything started, like you have a podcast for all the saints. Who is, do you prefer Benjamin or Ben?
Ben's fine.
Ben?
Yeah, Ben's fine.
Okay. Well, Ben Hancock, how did you even get here to this point where you care about these statistics, that you actually care enough to want to do something about it? Let's go back to the origin of you.
Yeah, That's a big question. So my family, my dad's side, joined the church with my great-grandfather, and he was a patriarch in the church. And he's one of those people that I'm really proud to be related to, because everyone who comes up to me in the church is like, oh, I remember your great-grandfather, amazing man, really spiritual giant. And so I'm really proud of that heritage. And then my mum joined the church when she was 19 and is the only one of her family to join. And that's quite typical in the UK. But yeah, I had
Your mom did not?
She did join the church at 19 years old.
At 19, okay.
Yeah, and she's one of the most faithful members of the church you'll ever meet. So I had a great upbringing in respect to the church. And I got a testimony very early on because my sister was stillborn when I was very young. And so she would have been my first sister. So you can imagine.
You were number one. You're the
I
first.
was number two. And she was going to be number 4. I think number 4 or 5. I've got a lot of siblings. But that was a really spiritual moment for me early on to test my faith, because I wondered. And I'd been told I remember being told at church something by one of these, people who are interested in deep doctrine. And bear in mind, I was like 6 at the time. I was 6 years old and being told that I wouldn't see my sister again because she wasn't born. So eternal family didn't really count because she wasn't born. And
how far along was she?
She was like going to be born. Yeah, it was like very far along. So again, I was very young, so my memories of the actual event, but what stayed with me was what I was told maybe a year or 2 after, which is the sister that I was really excited to have, actually I would never meet because eternal family didn't count because she was born asleep.
Who told you this?
It was one of these guys who loves obscure deep doctrine. And he didn't say it in a cruel way, but he sort of put the doctrine forward. But I didn't believe that. It didn't feel right because I've all my life I've kind of felt like, she had a name, Ellie, and I was really, as a child, very like excited to one day meet. I said, my sister, she's not here with me now, but I know one day that I'll be able to meet her. And so, it's one of those situations where I looked at President Eyring when he said, worry about the family stuff later. It'll be better than you can ever imagine. The definition of that for me is my family will be together and we'll get to meet my wonderful sister who I didn't get to share this mortality with. But from 6 years old, 7 years old, I had the opportunity to really think about the plan of salvation in a way probably most 6 or 7 year olds don't get to do it. And I received a confirmation from the Spirit of the truthfulness of God's plan for us. And I've held on to that testimony ever since. And so I've always since then been very eager to get involved with church stuff, and I participate a lot. Whenever there's a big thing happening in the church in the UK, I'm usually weaseling my way in there somehow to get involved. And I love the church and what it's given me, and I love the restored gospel, and the blessings of that are very clear in my mind. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that from a young age, I was asking those bigger questions and was able to receive answers. It's really helped me.
I've even told you this when we talked before. Like you have a very mature soul to you. I didn't realize that when you told me how old you were, I was like, really? But so at the age of 6, you kind of have this hinge point at such an early time.
Yeah.
That causes you to really be serious about a lot of these like questions that many adults have about the purpose of life and the plan of salvation.
Yeah.
But also what you're saying, you chose for that to anchor you. And so from the age of 6, you had this experience with your sister Ellie. You felt that God gave you a confirmation that it would be a lot like what President Eyring said, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, just kind of like, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about what that chap said.
Yeah.
He was being insensitive. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It'll be fine. And for me, that was enough. But like you said, it provided an anchor where all throughout my life, I've loved learning about the plan of salvation. And something that really changed my life was truly understanding that mortality is a probationary period. That became my motto for many years because I really just wanted, I don't know, I woke up every morning for a long time remembering that and thinking, let's attack the day. You know what I mean? Because it's a probationary period.
It's a test.
It's a test. It's a test. And
This isn't the thing. This is the thing that's preparing us for something else. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and this is something that I touched on with an episode I did with Jasmine Rapley. Was this kind of, you can look at commandments and you can look at this testing phase of our eternal journey in two ways. And I find it helpful to think of it from an employment phase where I've had great bosses and I've had bad bosses at work. And a bad boss will say to you, you know what, if you don't do your work better, I don't know how secure your position is going to be, or not very supportive, or giving you rules to constrain you. And you'll even have bosses who maybe they feel threatened by your ambition.
You've felt this before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But then the flip side of that is when you go from that to a boss that says to you, listen, I see amazing potential in you. You could be at this position in the company if you did these few things. And I'll help you. I'll provide you the training to do it. And I'll provide you with the opportunities to increase your qualifications and all of this. But seriously, if you do this, this, and this, I can really see you, getting that position that you really want. And to me, having been in both of those situations, it's made me overjoyed when I think of our divine potential and the plan of salvation, because I look at that and I look at mortality as a probationary period, as Christ not saying follow these rules so you don't slip up, but follow these rules so that you can inherit all that the Father has and all of that, and you can be joint heirs with Christ of this kingdom, as Paul says. That's so exciting. And I look at Jesus Christ, right? Paul said he endured the cross for the joy that was set before him, despising the shame, and is now set at the right hand of God. And I think, if we really have an understanding of the potential joy we can get through the plan of salvation, then we can endure anything, and that's fine. And I think that analogy holds still with employment with that. And so I just look at it and think, let's push every day to do it. And sometimes that's really hard, and I've certainly had days where that's not the case.
So you've had to be pretty resilient from a young age, even into your career, and you've gotten to the point where even with the plan of salvation, I'm understanding you saying that that's the connection I thought you were going. And I think that's true. The difference between the two different bosses, and you feel like God is this more ideal boss, right? That He's opening this plan for us to make it forward, and He wants to give us all that we can, whatever's necessary to get there. Yeah. No, I just think you're just very interesting to me. I don't know. It's not. I mean, I know it's not just the accent, okay? Because I know that a lot of times people are like, oh, let me, but you just seem like you kind of know your purpose, and that's what's allowing you to make these different decisions in your career or in your life. I mean, you worked with some pretty prominent, well-known. Are you okay to talk about some of it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So you. But I think it's interesting to see that importance of getting that anchor early. That at the age of 6, that most people would say that is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But as God says, like ashes for beauty, right?
Can I be clear too, though, Stephen? That doesn't mean I've never had questions.
Of course.
And I think it's great to have questions, but the questions should not be the pursuit of faith. The questions are supplementary. Well,
what are some of those questions that you've had? Let's just get
for example, we have a rich, abundant culture of Christianity in the UK. And at Christmas and Easter, I'll go to Catholic churches. And there are many times when I hear a sermon and I think, I've always dismissed the Trinity. And I always kind of look at it upon like, well, that's stupid, right? 3 in 1, that's crazy. And I thought, well, I should pay some honor and respect to their beliefs. And so I really looked into the Trinity and was thinking, what is the correct nature of God? And allowing me to, having the freedom and knowing that I have the anchor to explore those things sincerely has led me to a deeper rooted faith in what I've got. And some people might look at that and make a decision of they might look at that and say, yeah, I'll go for that. But I do think a sincere study, completely impartial and taking the best of what both opposing sides have to offer can really be meaningful. I looked at the Trinity from a charitable perspective.
Yeah.
Someone who was really trying to seek out what they were doing. And I think it's really easy to knock on it and stuff. But actually, I saw some cool elements to it, and then I realized when I studied my own faith more deeper that I was like, but it's made me believe so much more in the nature of God that I've been brought up with, and my understanding in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it strengthened my faith. Now, as I say, like, questions shouldn't be the pursuit of faith. The pursuit of faith should be close communion with Jesus Christ and daily repentance and ordinances and covenants. And through that, you'll feel very satisfied. But it's quite interesting to engage. President Nelson had this quote that was very rare that I posted on Instagram, where he said, "A powerful Latter-day Saint is a thinking Latter-day Saint.
I remember that.
One who reasons well, one who synthesizes data well." So I think I obviously took that as important to say, I need to reason well. I need to be able to look at things and critically think. And then I need to synthesize data well, which is to take what I've learned and actually apply it.
Yeah.
And Joseph Smith was the same. He studied James, the book of James, and he actually did what it said. And he prayed with intent to act. And so, that's an important aspect.
And that's what makes all the difference. But you care about facts. I think that, would you agree with that? Data? Are you a data guy?
I love statistics.
You like statistics?
I'm terrible at maths, but I like to look at
Or do you
statistics.
feel yourself to be, I think that that's a good strength, right? There's different sides of everyone. But I hear you saying that you did have this inquiry to kind of get more of a foundational, I don't know, evidence base of the Trinity. You had a question about it, but you're saying even you kind of have to balance both of those sides with the data, with the facts and everything else too. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, like for me, that's seeking truth. If you have a question, I'm not saying question things for fun.
Yeah.
But I had a genuine question.
Yeah.
And so I tried to go about that in a very genuine way while staying very close to Jesus Christ and
including him in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other questions that you've had that you, and not to say, and I don't think that we're like advertising like, hey, question. I mean, it's such a fine line and misunderstood if to say question everything. I think that you could also say seek confirmation of truth.
That's great.
That's
I don't know. How the restoration unfurled, right?
But I almost say like the alternative ways could just be like question everything. That could go a lot of ways. Like don't trust anything.
Yeah, no. We're not saying that because you wouldn't say that about Joseph Smith, would you?
Yeah, no.
And yet, how did the Aaronic priesthood and baptism come about?
Yeah, ask the question. The whole Doctrine and Covenants is all started with the question.
You read in the Bible and you say, well, what does that mean? And then you seek an answer.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of my questions was the plan of salvation. Would I see my sister again? So, and a seeking knowledge.
At a young age too, wow. Which you think is so cool. Huh.
It is. I was very grateful for that as I look back, because I think that's quite, I don't know, I was speaking to a friend the other day who's began to question at mid-20s and start to have those questions where he's like, I've never really thought about these things actually. And now I'm exposed to some other faiths and I'm learning and I'm like, do I actually believe in what I claim to believe? And here's something really interesting when we talk of studies, is there was a great study done on happiness, the biggest happiness study ever done. And, you've probably heard of it before. But one of the aspects said that people who profess a belief and even attend church and all of that, but don't actually live out the belief, have the same happiness levels as people who don't have a belief at all.
Oh, I haven't heard this one.
But if you do live out your belief, the belief that you espouse, if you actually do live it out, the happiness level is, it equated to something like $100,000 pay rise in terms of like,
the commitment, the consecration, the
so
ownership.
It's like if you're watching this and you're a Latter-day Saint, but you haven't opened the Book of Mormon in a while, what's the point? It's a really busy faith. When we're active, we go to church, we go to youth, we do all these things. What's the point if you're not actually reaping the benefits of it, the satisfaction? Elder Kieran, we're a church of joy. And the way we access that joy is by living out.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah. We don't just go to church and, I've been given a talk, so I'm going to do this. It's like, no, actually live it. And you'll actually find that you love it so much more. I love stats.
Well, I just think it's so interesting. I think sometimes that might be some of the reason, and I can't speak for everyone, it's the challenge to read the scriptures or even to pray sincerely is the fear that, because God's going to ask you to do something. He's going to invite you to do something. He's going to inspire you to do something, to change something. He wants us to be different, right? So I think that that's very important. And you're learning this at a young age, the importance of that. And you're asking questions. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, it's actually strengthened you to have that anchor and foundation where you're at now. We didn't really talk about this yet, but you move into your career, you meet your wife, you get married.
Oh yeah, you wanted to know about.
You decided you're people may or may not know, but you've been behind the background, like the Wizard of Oz. You've been behind some of the most popular, most successful podcasts that are that are known throughout the whole world, not just in America. Right? Is it okay to say? You were one of the. What would you say the correct name? What was your title there?
Well, it was kind of a fluid role, but I was the third team member on Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson.
Yeah, I've heard of. I've watched plenty of his episodes. Very, very well done. And so you've been behind a lot of that.
And several other podcasts for journalists, and I started out doing political events in Westminster in the UK, where I don't know. I was tasked with growing this random journalists podcast.
Really?
And I thought this audience probably would like to gather together because it's a political thing. They want to get together. They want to feel the strength of gathering. And I learned about the strength of gathering in our faith, right? So I applied that to that and thought, well, they would like to gather. And so I put on an event. It was wild because I had no experience doing events. But we had a sold out event with 900 people come, and it was a political talk with the host, this journalist, and another TV presenter in Westminster. And I started doing these events, and I got quite a reputation in that political area for doing them, and moved between them, and did some really wild events. Some of them were covered in the news, and one of them in particular was quite high profile. So yeah, I started off.
Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yeah.
What was it?
It's really fun. During COVID, the health secretary was Matt Hancock.
Oh yeah, I remember this. I think. Yeah. Keep talking. I think I remember this.
So there was a journalist called Isabel Oakeshott who was brought on to be a ghostwriter for his memoirs during COVID. You know how they all do these memoirs during COVID to talk about and make a few quick bucks. And she realized that as part of her job role, she was given the whole WhatsApp archive to the top echelons of government meetings during the whole of COVID. And so what did she do? She leaked it. And her and another politician came to me and said, we know you've done some of these other political events. Could you put on an event where we can talk about these WhatsApp leaks? It was a huge story in the UK. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. This sounds great. So I put together an event and we worked together. And what we decided was we would have sections where they talked about it. And then we would bring in actors to reenact some of the conversations that were had in the WhatsApp, some of the highlights.
They play them out?
Yeah. So
that's so interesting.
We put this event on and we had this big venue for it and it was going to be great and it was getting some media attention.
What's it called again?
It was called The Lockdown Files.
Oh my gosh. I just wanted to see. I want to get a reference point. I think I've seen this.
The funny thing about it was that Matt Hancock's legal team kept threatening the venues that we got. So they kept canceling it.
What?
So
you have an ability to you're very creative and you're a good producer and to this scale, right? To have this effect.
That was very early on in my career. That was as I was working with Modern Wisdom. I did that.
So the Lockdown Files. What else would it be?
The Lockdown Files live or something like that. I don't know. I can send you the
links
after.
That somebody covered that.
So that's the story when it was broken, and we did the Lockdown Files live.
And you
it was hilarious. And so what ended up happening was
it was your idea.
Yeah, well,
you're part of the group.
They
that helped
came
put it
to me
together.
asking me to put on an event, and we kind of collaborated all together.
So amidst going back to the very beginning when we talked about, there's a bunch of people with misconceptions about the growth of the church or even understanding of the church. You now kind of have this world that you're in where you have the skill to create content in such a way, but then Was there any type of challenge or even like wrestle within you or a desire to share even back then?
Yeah, I mean, that's where For All the Saints came about, really, where I was like, I would absolutely love to use the experience and skills that I've got now to correct some of the narratives that I don't like to see going on, and to give a reason to maybe, I looked at what modern wisdom, the impact that it had on its listeners, and I thought, what if we could make kind of a modern wisdom for Latter-day Saints in Europe, where they could have something engaging and interesting and professionally done enough, especially with guests, where it's like, oh, I've never seen these guests on a Latter-day Saint faith podcast before, where they could click on it and actually be like, oh. What's he doing on Ben's podcast, And I'm really proud of what we've built, and I hope that it does have an impact on some people. And, I was just grateful to do that. But yeah, there were some difficulties then with the people that I was working with, knowing that I was a Latter-day Saint.
Really?
Yeah, because people are ignorant in the UK about it.
They would find out that you're a Latter-day Saint, and then that would affect your job, or what would happen? Because of the stories that they knew about them? It
was almost like I respect you a little bit less.
Huh.
So one example is someone who's a historian and writer I was having lunch with, and we were planning a podcast. And he says, I never could have believed in a million years that I'd meet a Yorkshire Mormon, you said. And I said, there's quite a lot of us. We are around,
But he met you and didn't know it about you, and then he's finding it out now.
And he said, I can't believe someone who, seems as, well-versed in podcasting and all this would believe that this random kid, Joseph Smith, would find some gold plates and never show them to anyone, and you just believe him fully.
Interesting.
And
so you're there. What are you thinking? So take me to that day. You're there. What happened?
Well, I was very quick to say, well, have you heard about the witnesses? People did see the gold plates, and I find with all of these elements that I found, because I had the same with Chris, like we've talked about.
He didn't. But when he hired you, he didn't know.
No, but we've talked about it, and it was funny because if you go back through the Modern Wisdom archive, you'll hear several times him refer to my Mormon assistant Ben. And I got that with the journalist too, and so it almost defined me in a way. My faith defined me, having this label of Mormons. But it was always something where they appreciated it, and they knew I was a bit different because I got married young and all of this. But it was always still this thing that was like, yeah, he's a Mormon. It's kind of a funny thing about him because Mormons are peculiar, and they do peculiar things. And so it's like one by one correcting those things. And I had this really sweet experience with the journalist that I was talking about earlier on, the original journalist who I worked for and helped him do events for his podcast. And at one of his events, we took some of the people who had arrived early to a local church that the journalist loved. And he loved bringing people there. It was like George Washington's family church in England before they emigrated to America. And we stood and we were talking about faith with these attendants. There's about 15 of us in this chapel. And they go, what are you? Are you Anglican, Ben? I say, no, I'm actually a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they were shocked. And they started having a real go at me. They were saying...
What did they say?
I can't remember word for word, but it was very much along the lines of, what are you doing? Like, that's not a biblical church. You should be an Anglican. You should be doing this. It's not, you're stupid for thinking that, especially in the UK. You've joined an American cult, And then the journalist stands up at the church strong and he says, don't you dare speak like that about Ben. And he was very kind to say, he's more Christian than I am, and he was a devout Christian, which, again,
Interesting.
I don't know about that, but, he's a good man. But he said those things. He stood up and defended me very passionately. And this was someone who, a year before, had never had any interaction with a Latter-day Saint and probably had the same ignorance about what you were actually like. But I just felt so grateful that in my work for him and trying my best in my work that him and several others I've worked with have now had these positive interactions with the church and have a very different view of the church because of, working with me. And that's the same with loads of people. That's why, when we as Latter-day Saints just try to be a good example, try to work hard,
Be the best we
good,
can.
be the best we can, it makes such a difference. And that's what I do with the podcast now is about 30 to 40% of our podcast guests are not members of the church. Sometimes if they know I'm a member of the church, they will say, no, I'm not coming on. I don't want to be on a Latter-day Saint podcast. Or they'll say, I'll come on, but I don't want to be associated with the church. Or they'll come on not knowing. And after I've had one where as soon as we finished press recording, they said, are you a Latter-day Saint? I went,
How do they know?
yep. Because it was an episode on marriage. And I spoke about marriage. And
Can you say who it was?
it was Andrea Mrozek and Peter John Mitchell. And they'd written a book about why marriage still matters. And I hadn't told them I was a Latter-day Saint.
But you agree with a lot of what they taught.
We aligned so perfectly.
That's what I think is interesting, yeah.
So afterwards, so that was again great because she was like, yeah, you're a Latter-day Saint. Oh, interesting. And we kept in touch.
But interesting.
Yeah, it was so cool. And again, like so many people, there's a huge show in the UK called The Traitors. And we had the winner of that come on the podcast to talk about his faith. Yeah, so many people. We had one of the most amazing episodes that I did was with this Catholic woman called Diane Foley. Her son, James Foley, was publicly beheaded by ISIS years ago, front page of every newspaper.
What?
And she came on to share her experience of forgiving his terrorist killer. And she actually went and met the killer face to face. And she came away, she said, I was praying and God was with me the whole time. And I saw the goodness in him. I saw the humanity in him. And I came to forgive him. And it was difficult, but that was one of the most powerful episodes. And I'm like, we need to get people like this on all of our Latter-day Saint podcasts, don't we?
Yeah, to kind of share. I mean, because to me, for all the saints, because there's been a lot of chatter lately after what happened in Michigan.
Of course.
And people are like, well, and the conversation now is, well, you guys Mormons aren't Christian. And a lot of it because of the narratives, right? Which I feel like your podcast is hopefully doing. But I'm hearing you even say now, because let me go back actually, because President Nelson himself, I remember, I think it was like 1990, he has a talk where he talks about the name of the church.
Yeah,
he talks about the word saints. He says that the word Christian is only mentioned 3 times in all of the scriptures. And in one of them, it references it as people who would suffered for their beliefs in Christ, right? But he says the word saint is mentioned like 60 or something times in the New Testament and more in the Old Testament. Well, I don't know if it's more in comparison, but even there's a lot of more times that it mentions it in the Old Testament as well. And what it means to be a saint. And he gives all these examples of what a saint really is. And even in 1 Nephi chapter 14, he says the Spirit of the Lord rested upon the covenant people of, I can't remember word for it, of God, and the saints, it says. And so it makes me wonder of like, what does it mean to be a saint? And I know everybody wants to say, I'm Christian, I believe in Christ. But I think that to be a saint is important. And there's maybe a misconception of what a saint is. And we compare it to what some religions like, oh, Saint Peter, but there's many saints who aren't members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you're interviewing them, right? It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And I've found through that, I think the biggest lesson I've learned from that is that, when people say like, oh, you Mormons, you're not Christian, maybe the best response to that is not to enter into a Twitter battle, but to just go out one by one and work hard and be your best. And you'll have people defending you if you do that. And I never once had to argue with that journalist about whether Mormons are Christian or not, because he saw it in my actions, how much I love Jesus Christ.
Give me an example. I know you're not going to it's hard to brag on yourself, but you went from him being like, what, you're a Mormon? What, that's crazy. And then to offending you. What happened along the way in the middle?
It's little things like say, I mean, there were so many things really. It was, so one of my first people that I worked with was a country house painter called Jonathan Miles Lee. And I worked with him until the day he died from cancer at 52. And at the end of his life, people knew he was dying. And I was 21, 22. And essentially, I was praying for meaningful work. I was working at a flooring store. and I was praying, like, I really feel like there's something that I need to do. There's a calling that I haven't yet found out about. And the next morning, I messaged this artist. I felt to message this artist because he was always posting and talking about how busy he is in his trying. And I messaged him and I said, do you need a hand? Like, I worked with a member of the church who was a politician, and I helped him with just casual duties that he needed a hand with. So I said, I've done it before. If you need a hand, you can pay me an hourly rate. I'll stick to a budget that you have, but I'll do the best that I can with that. And he called me straight away. He lived in the Royal Crescent in Bath, the huge, lovely crescent. And he was in his bathtub having a bath. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm just in the bath, but I had to call you because last night I was praying for someone to help me. And I was getting this close to sticking a job advert on LinkedIn, but I had no idea how to do that. And I didn't know how to find the right person. But you've just come and told me that you were praying about meaningful work. God's put us together. And from that moment, we had a very strong bond. I worked with him literally the morning after we began. And we just had this beautiful relationship of trust, like from straight away. And it was a very formative time for me. And when it came closer to his death, so many people would come with very enticing offers and saying, oh, I'll write your memoir. And they'd get really close to him, or we'll help you with your will. And we'll make sure your legacy lives on and your archive lives on and all of this. And it'd get very close to him over a month at a time, building a relationship, only to then say, could you leave me that painting in your will? And instantly, he would just say his heart would sink because he realized all these people were crowding around him, trying to get, and his only solace in that time was little Ben at 20 years old. And I remember saying to my wife, like, I'm certainly not perfect and I wouldn't want to be held up as an example, but I know for him that I did my best to retain my integrity. And I did my best to make sure he knew that he could trust me. And I was really proud of myself for sticking to that. And by doing that, because to be honest, there were times when I wanted a painting too, because they would go for millions, right?
Yeah.
And, but I never did that because I valued this relationship of trust. And I had faith that if I stuck to that, I would be blessed for that. And obviously it was a big blessing to Jonathan, who, the painter. And so, I stuck to that. And it's really blessed me because some of the references that he had given to other journalists and other podcasters saying, this is Ben, that was the start. That was how it all came off. And with the journalist, it was little things like we were doing an event and it's like, well, I'm not going to do an event on a Sunday because I go to church on a Sunday. And he's like, wait, you go to church every Sunday? Because in England, a lot of people just go to church Easter and Christmas, but they're still Christians and they'll have been christened and all of that. Whereas he was like, wow, this guy's really dedicated. He went on a mission for 2 years. He did that. So really, as a base standard of Latter-day Saints, many of us have served missions. Many of us go to church. That in itself is very active compared to a lot of Christianity. So, we could be open about that and make that a part of our lives. And I've just found that doing that has paid dividends, and it's meant I've never had to argue with Mormons or Christian and all that because they already know. They already know the devotion. So, yeah, your influence can really impact someone.
Do the people that we know want to know Jesus because they know us? You ever heard that? I can't remember who said that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like we should live in a way so that people who don't know the Savior will want to know him because they know us, because we try our best to live like him, Yeah. And I'm almost hearing you say that it's good to have a podcast to do it, but what can even be more impactful is people just being who they are, and naturally not being afraid to let people know. But what you do actually means more than what you say you are.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm learning from you.
The podcast is great, but the most impactful time is before and after the recording when we chat. And then what happens after that? Like I recorded recently with Michel-Yves Bolloré, who has a book that sold 400,000 copies in France, Spain, and Italy called God, the Science, the Evidence, where he teamed 20 scientists together to give a comprehensive guide of every scientific argument that proves God's existence. And it's releasing in October in UK and US in English for the first time. And so I invited him on the show, and it was fantastic. It was brilliant. But then what was better was that we met up for lunch. We met up for lunch in London and continued that relationship. And he's never had any interaction with Latter-day Saints before. So it's just like one thing, you know, and
Man,
we can all do that. You know what I mean? We can
everybody
all
can do that.
Yeah.
How many people do we know? And I mean, yeah, it's good because I think it's even interesting. Like you have people who are members of the church that's like, oh, I didn't know that they were a member of the church and they believe in God. Like, what is it? You know, I think it's important. I'm also understanding that all of us can do this just by being, just by literally being who we are. It makes me think of Elder Uchtdorf's talk whenever he invited someone to church. He was nervous about what people said in sacrament meeting, but the people, they loved it and they didn't mention all the details. They mentioned about how people treated them. They mentioned how people, they noticed how people lived, the way that they lived.
And I love what you said about do people want to know Jesus Christ because they know us? And everyone has a sphere of influence. And I guess that's a really good guiding principle for your daily actions, and something that I'd like to implement going forward in my life from this discussion is do the people in my sphere of influence, do they have that? Do they have a good view of the faith that I belong to based on my actions? You know, and I think that's a great question actually to ask and figure out, you know, the people I work with, if they ever had a hard time, would they maybe turn and say, Ben, I know you're a believer in Jesus. I'm going through a really hard time. Do you have anything that can help me go through that? Because things like that.
I mean, the way you live, because you can see in a job relationships, you can tell who people follow by just who they naturally follow. It even titles, no titles, this or that. It's like, oh, I know that they're good at that. They can help me. Hey, can you help me do this? They know that you can do it because they've seen you do it, you know? And so you could say who you are all day, but it matters more. This I feel like is kind of becoming the theme of what I feel like we're talking about is, though that there's these issues of false narratives of the church, people in the church or outside the church can even have a powerful perspective of the church by how we live, what we believe. And I wanted to ask you earlier, I want to maybe circle back to this idea of like, what is it that you believe that causes you to live that way that would cause people to then change this perspective? What is it you believe? That's
a good question. I think over the last couple of years, this has become more prominent to me because I've gone through some of the hardest challenges of my life with illness and dealing with like stress and burnout and what that happened to me. I had a really serious health issue from that really just kept me at home, kept me not being able to do much. And
do you want to give us some background on it a little bit?
I was just I was working intensely and not looking after myself, and you know, working till 2 a.m. and every night trying to really push, like no balance at all. And then my work was getting really intense where it wasn't something where at 5 p.m. I could switch off. It was like, if I got a text, I needed to do something right then. And I needed to do this and this and this and monitor this. And it was just all consuming. And at the same time, we were moving house and a lot of other stressful things going on. And my skin erupted into this horrific kind of, I still didn't even know because I went
the inside started coming to the outside. I mean, really? Like,
yeah, that's what it was, is all of the imbalance and conflict on the inside manifested on the outside. And it was just, I was going through crippling pain most days, and it was just really hard. It was a really hard time in my life, and I'm a lot better now, but I'm still kind of impacted with my skin, and I have to take things very easily. Otherwise, I'll get affected by that still. But in that time, I started noticing trends toward feeling bitter towards God. And I kept praying, and I remember people saying to me, trying to comfort me, saying, well, maybe there's still something that God needs you to learn. And I hated that.
Thank you.
That was so annoying. It's like, I've learned now, I will rejoice when this is over. You know, it's stolen a year of my life. I felt it was really cruel because my wife was pregnant with our first child. And I'd always like looked forward to the opportunity to look after my wife, and she was looking after me. It was just horrible. It was just killed me.
The
inside.
opposite of what you expected always.
Yeah. And I was going to church and I couldn't put on a suit because my skin was so uncomfortable, and I would miss church a lot of weeks because I just physically couldn't go. But going to church and dealing with the thought of like, I know it sounds silly, but thinking, well, I don't want to go to church if I have to wear casual clothes because I fear judgment. Like when that's a question that comes into your head, it really puts things into priority and perspective. Remember, there was one Sunday where I came to church in a t-shirt and a jumper because I could not wear anything formal. It was killing me. And I went and I my face was red, my skin was dry. I just didn't want to go. And I just felt that I would sit at the back quietly and people would probably judge me and they'll double take and everything. And it was just horrible. And I got there and one of my friends at church came
wait. You're at church and people are, I mean, you're saying it so casually, but I can tell that it affected you.
It really did.
I mean, to where you didn't want to come.
This was
me
anticipating it, though. It wasn't actually happening. That's the key thing, is I was anticipating it. I was caring so much about I was caring so much about what people might think of me that it stopped me from going. And then I went, and the actual experience was one of my friends came up to me, gave me a hug and said, "We've missed you. Are you doing all right? How's your health? Are you doing okay?" That moment meant the world to me, because then I was like, how stupid the thought that I would distance myself from church and doing this for fear that I would be judged. And these people love me. And it was just a beautiful moment for me, and my self-worth was increased. And it made my faith much more authentic, because I realized that, yeah, I could come to church, warts and all, as I would say in UK. I don't know if that's an expression.
We got to, right? We need to.
We need to, because, again, it's one of those things where you say, oh, but church is a hospital for the sick, not for the perfect. And it's like, yeah. But wait till you are in that situation where you do fear judgment, and you do. And can you push past that and go? And when you do that, it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to see it meant everything to me. It changed my life.
Changed your life.
That small moment. And I realize now I need to tell the guy, because I haven't even told him that. But that moment changed my life, because it made my faith much more authentic, where it was like, okay, I always believed in Jesus, but now I understand charity. I've always tried to give charity to others, but I don't think I'd ever really consciously, in a very difficult spot, received charity from myself. I was like, that's it. I need to be more like what he just did.
But how does it change the way you give charity now? Because before you obviously, because you haven't said this out loud, but you seem like a very giving person. You're giving of yourself. You're working late night into the hours, 2:00 in the morning to help somebody else's thing.
But there's always a benefit to me.
Yeah.
I think that's what I realized is when it really came down to, like, in my current calling, I guess there are things I have to do where I have to go and visit people in their home, for example. That would be expected. As ministers, we do that. And it's always been funny. I'm very comfortable giving a talk in front of 1,000 people, but if you get me to have to do a ministering interview, I find that so challenging. I find that really, because it's that vulnerability one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it was I had learned to be vulnerable enough where I could sit one-on-one with someone and really, really try to sympathize and empathize and try to be a vessel for God's love to reach them. And sometimes that still scares me. I don't know why. Maybe I need to go to therapy or something and figure out why that is. But yeah, that was true of that situation. I just I needed to forget myself and just reflect God's love, even if the situation made me a bit like, oh, I don't know about this person. They kind of seem like, say you see a homeless person, you're like, oh, that a little bit of me was that before. And after going through that experience, I was softened and humbled and brought down to a place where I could really forget myself and pride and ego and all of that stupid stuff and say, like, I really need to minister to this person, or I really need to channel God's love. He's prompting me to do this. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense to me. He did this to you, and before it, that you didn't even come because of what you were worried about.
I basically was asking myself, would I do what he did?
Yeah, but now you could. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Now you can.
Yeah.
And maybe you did before, but now you're doing it. Now you can do it even differently now, because I'm sure you were a nice guy before. I'm sure you reached out to the person before, but how much differently will it be now?
It was deeper.
Do you know what I'm saying? It makes me think of the Savior, why he can succor us so well. Nephi, when they say, knowest thou the condescension of God? And he's like, I don't know everything, but I know he loves his children. And he came down to earth, a God, and became like us and experienced what we experience, and how much more he can help us now. And he probably knew about it before. I don't know, but it just seems it's a very endearing thing for God to do that to us.
Oh, hugely.
And you're saying that experience has affected the way you live and the way you minister to other people. It makes perfect sense to me. I don't know. Do you feel like I understand what you're saying?
No, yeah, because when you think about it, I've been trying to understand grace, and I was asked to give a stake conference talk, and it gave me an opportunity to really dive into what I mean. Because in that moment when I was struggling, I wanted to apply the atonement, but I was kind of thinking of it as like a heavenly moisturizer, where I'm like, well, okay, I need to apply the atonement now. Where's the tube of atonement gel for me to apply it? But actually, so I really had to think like, I want to be proactive so that next time I'm in a situation where I struggle, I have the tools and understand what it means to apply the atonement. And this is what I learned and I learned this from a book, An Endowment of Love, as well. I had Melinda Wheelwright Brown on the podcast. Completely blew my mind, something that she said. And it was only a small part of the book, but it was separating the atonement of Jesus Christ into two aspects. The atoning sacrifice of Jesus Christ, so the actual thing that he did, and the atoning love of Jesus Christ, which was the love it took to do the thing. And that's how I approached.
I love that.
Oh, it changed my life.
It's exactly
again,
what
so
you're
many
saying.
life-changing things. Because I realized that, so imagine you have a terminal disease and someone comes to you and says, let me take that from you and I'll suffer it. Honestly, I will. But just like, live a good life for me, please. I think if you had that happen to you and you understand that in such a kind of vivid, raw way, then every single day you would live differently and you would treat people differently. And if you're going through a hard time, and this is the key thing from my learning, if you're going through a hard time, you'd think, well, they took that suffering away from me. So I know I'm feeling like I'm having a hard time, but I'm going to live this day to the most. And I think understanding the atoning sacrifice, but also the atoning love that it took to do that, changed my life too in a way where I was like, okay, for me, that's grace. The knowledge of the fruits of the atoning sacrifice, but also the knowledge that someone loves me enough to actually do that is life-changing when you think about it.
It is.
So that really helped me, and I realized that the answer to all of my questions, the answer to all of my worries, the answer to all of my concerns around when I would be healed physically, because, that experience with that guy at church, it was wonderful, it didn't heal me. The answer was Jesus Christ. It was close communion with Jesus Christ. The closer I was to Jesus Christ, the closer I was to an understanding of the atoning sacrifice and the atoning love. That was a thing where I had no worries when I did that. No worries at all. And that, C.S. Lewis wrote Till We Have Faces, which is this great retelling of the myth of Cupid and Psyche, and brings in Psyche's sister Orual to the mix, who's jealous that she's ugly and her sister is beautiful. Anyway, she writes a letter of complaint to the gods, saying, I keep asking you questions and you never answer me. And she has this remarkable vision at the climax of the story where she's brought forward to the gods and she brings up her letter of complaint. And she says, I'll try and repeat the phrasing. She says, I now know, Lord, why you utter no answer. You are yourself the answer. Before your face, questions die away. What other answer would suffice? And that was that moment where I realized close communion with Christ was my answer. My answer wasn't another 3 months and you'll be all right. The answer was, I love you and I did this for you. So like, that's important. Apply that to your life.
Apply that to your life.
Yeah, like
Could you
use this, synthesize the data, as President Nelson said in that quote. Understand the atoning love and sacrifice.
Ooh,
and
synthesize the data. I love that.
That's
right?
President Nelson, not me.
But I'm saying in this context, it's different than what people would expect. It's almost like synthesize the intellectual data. You're saying synthesize the data from this experience that I'm collecting.
Yeah.
And then live accordingly.
So next time you have a difficult period, which for me would, inevitably come because the autoimmune issues and things like that, they flare up. So I'm good now. In a few weeks, if I have a really stressful time, I could then have another 2 weeks of suffering, But I know then that, stay close to Jesus Christ and you'll be blessed with perspective and you'll be blessed with a perfect love and you'll be blessed with a self-worth rooted in a divine potential rather than a self-worth rooted in how good you're doing at work that day. Things like that. So those things are life-changing.
It changes it.
And that's what I love about the podcast is I get to learn these things. I get to speak to people who do these things and I'm trying to reason and understand and then synthesize the data following President Nelson's advice.
So living what you're understanding is a big deal.
Oh,
it's
hugely.
Which is
because like we said, if you don't do that, then it's the same as if you didn't have a belief at all, according to your happiness levels, like that study. So you may as well,
You don't even own them. They mean nothing to you. Yeah. I think this is a study with AI. Like even with AI, it's a similar thing. When if you don't put the work in, you don't even remember it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I think the study was they had different people. Maybe this is off the topic. I don't know, but it's like people that they had 3 different groups. The people who had used AI, people who, anyway, they had to write a paper. The people who wrote it actually could remember it. The people who used AI didn't remember it, even though they read it. But the process of writing it helps it become part of you. It's important, right?
And there's a really important element of that I think it's important to touch on, which is the balance between consuming and creating. Because you can consume all the time and, you can talk about that with social media. We're constantly consuming. People will be listening. They'll be consuming this podcast. And it's okay to consume, but consuming shouldn't be your life. The purpose of our creation is to become like God. And God is this ultimate creator. People call him this creator God. Even if you're not a Latter-day Saint, it's like, I believe in a creator God. I don't know who he is, but I believe that he's a creator. So it's like, if we are made in the image of God and we're supposed to become like him, then surely creation is an element that should be important to us. That's partly why I love the podcast, because it's that opportunity to create, but also in a very basic sense. If you consume the scriptures, then you need to create a life that is kind of learning and applying things from that. But I just think in all aspects, I think creation is a really important aspect of life and fulfilling our life, which is why, it's nice to consume and it's nice to listen to the podcast, but I hope people go and do something about it afterwards, You
don't get a witness until after the trial of your faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We look at it in a lot of ways of like, oh, but that's like literally what you're saying. There's no witness. What witness of what? Of Christ. And so there's no witness of Christ until the trial of your faith in Christ. It's faith in Christ. Living the things that he's inviting us to do increases our trust in him. And your friend who came in and talked to you, that's what he was doing. Was it in Moroni 6 when he talks about that? Like the purpose of what church is so that we can, what is it? I don't know, we could look it up, but it's like to check on the status of their soul. You didn't say status, right? But that's what he's doing. And so, but then that strengthens you by helping, right? It's like the thing we need, where Christ on the cross would like reached out to us. But that it doesn't make sense, but it's not a principle of the worldly side, So you've had experiences. What else do you believe that causes you to live? And that's one of these things that you're saying is this idea of what real charity is, right? To reach out to others. What else do you believe that causes you to live in a way that people would say, oh, I want to stand up for this guy. He does believe in Jesus Christ.
I think just optimizing for enduring joy. Because you can optimize for several things. you can optimize for money. You can optimize your life for money. You can optimize your life for attractiveness, physical attractiveness. I certainly haven't done that.
It's relative.
You can optimize for anything, and it's just like if you optimize for enduring joy, I really, and that's the thing that comes back to the plan of salvation. But I saw that with marriage because I served in a country where I served in Asia where they have a motto with marriage where they have the 5 C's of marriage, which is you should already have a car, a condo, a contract, a college degree, and cash. And then you get married.
That's good. Oh, you can't get married until you have it all figured out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I always thought I really want to go through those things with the woman I love, with my best friend. And I've been able to do that. And I'm grateful that I'm able to do that. But for me, that was part of optimizing for enduring joy, of saying, when I come back from my mission, I really want to try and find my wife, the one who, I'm supposed to be with. And I was really, I'm so grateful that I did that because, that's one thing that I got really right, I think. And sometimes you think,
it's important.
They got married too early, because
How old were you?
I was 21.
Okay.
So
It's
just
pretty common with the church, but I mean, the other people are like, "Are you really 21?" Yeah, people
Yeah.
are like in fraternities at 21.
But you compare yourself to others in social media, and you see people going on all these fun like holidays with lots of friends and things, or stuff like stupid, superficial stuff. But you look and say like, did I marry too young? But then you think about it and you go, no, not at all. I'm so grateful for the life that I have. I'm so grateful that I've gone through all of these difficulties of the last few years with my wife by my side. And that was one element of optimizing for enduring joy. And yeah, I don't know. I had something in my head I was going to say. I can't remember.
No, I feel like you're asking the question of whether or not it was worth it doing that at so early. But I even hear you saying that these experiences that you're having that are challenging, because marriage is not easy, by the way. I mean, it's not, and neither is being a father. You couldn't learn any other way. What are some of those things that you are learning that affect the way you live on a daily basis? Because again, we got to that probationary state, right? Right. Life is probationary. Marriage is it's a probationary thing. What are you learning in that circumstance that affects the way you live, that the world sees, that would allow someone to be like, yeah, he's a Christian,
Yeah. And I think that possibly was one of them, because I was at university and everyone was having a fun time, and I'm going home to my wife and we're going to have dinner together. And that's and they're like, "What? You're married?" I remember I was in class once and we were talking about, I did a marketing degree. So we were talking about marketing, some element of it. And I just happened to mention like, "Oh yeah, me and my wife." And everyone looked back. It's like, "Wait, what?" It's like, "Yeah."
You're like a freshman? Like, wait, yeah. What grade? What year were you?
I was in the UK. It would be first year.
So you were a freshman.
I was a freshman,
and they're like,
got married in my first term of university.
So none of them. Like, this is their first year. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair as well, my wife was the first woman that I dated. So I like to say I have a 100% success rate with women. I think she hates when I say that.
Why not? What's she saying? Like, oh, like, isn't tried and tested? Like, anyway, I think that's good. You know what you want. Yeah,
it was love at first sight for me. We had our first date. I took her to the Houses of Parliament and taught her about the government. Very strange, isn't it?
But she liked it.
Yeah, but I was interested in politics and she was as well. So I thought, have you ever been for a tour here? So I did it. And yeah, I was like, oh, she's the one. I don't know. She's the one. I don't need to worry anymore. Yeah, and it's been amazing. But yeah, I just think that optimizing for enduring joy and I just, that verse in Paul in Romans is one of the most important ones for me in the whole of the Bible, which I mentioned before, which is Jesus endured the cross for the joy that was set before him. And that's just taught me so much in that, like, I do find life difficult sometimes and it's hard and there's responsibility and all of that and greater things, and it's a constant push. But if we focus on the joy, we can endure anything. And we know what Jesus Christ endured. It's overwhelming to consider what he endured. I can't comprehend it. I watched the Passion of the Christ for the first time
Yeah, it was
last
intense.
Easter and was just crying the whole way through. I was just shocked me. And yeah, I was just so grateful for what he endured for me. But that verse gives it so much more context of that was hard, but he was focused on the joy ahead. And so, you know, I think that's a great guide map for us too when we're going through life is let's optimize and do the decisions that equal enduring joy. And enduring joy is always found in moments of righteousness. Always.
Always found there, huh?
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it?
Think of where you get enduring joy, and you'll never get it in a place that will be from a source of anything other than a moment of righteousness, is my belief.
This morning I woke up and my little 6-month-old baby. It was just beautiful. You know, I mean, and it just.
I've got a 6-month-old as well.
Do you know what I'm saying though? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, she's sealed to me and my wife. And it kind of made me emotional, you know?
Yeah.
And nobody saw it. I'm telling you now.
Yeah.
But I'm just witnessing to what you're saying is true, you know? I really do believe that. And I want to think about that even more later on. Like that's really true. That I think that is where the most joy comes. But the contrary, people would say, well, when you keep the commandments, it's like restrictive. What do you think that comes from?
Yeah, well, like I was saying before,
Because you would
there
say
are
that
two
it's
ways
joyful,
of viewing
right?
it. You can see it as God sees great potential in you. So like stick to this and you can get to this place. Or you can say, oh, I'm sick of all these commandments. And it's like, well, there's great potential for you. So therefore there are great expectations. You want to just sit on the couch all day?
Yeah.
No, you're not going to reach your potential if you don't do that. So it's difficult, but it's if you focus on the enduring joy of it, then when it is difficult, it's easier to do it. But I just think I'm so grateful for those commandments because I've been in positions in employment where I've really wanted to advance and I've worked really hard and I've been given nothing. I've been given no training, no extra kind of go off and do this to improve your skills. I'm like, I want to improve. I want to be better at this job. But you see nothing in me. And I know I've got it in me, you know?
They don't see it in you.
No.
Therefore, they don't try to support it? Is that what you're saying?
No, so they're like, well, we're not going to advance him. I'm just going to hire other people. And it's like, I could have done that job and I could have done it really well, but you didn't give me the training to do it. So I think of it in that where I've had that experience. And so when I look at the commandments, I view it as that of like, oh, God's put great resources. He's gone to great lengths to provide for us an opportunity to reach our potential because he sees that in us and he loves us. And
that's what he's doing.
And so, you know, you look at covenants and you're like, what an amazing opportunity. I'm going to take everything. I'm going to make every covenant that I can make. I'm going to try my best because Jesus did that for us. He loves us. He sacrificed for us. And as I said, I've been in positions where the boss I've worked for hasn't sacrificed for me so that I can advance when I've really wanted that advancements. So I'm not going to let go of this opportunity that has eternal ramifications. So that for me is my view of commandments, and I've always been pretty happy to keep them when I've had that viewpoint.
What are most people surprised to hear that you are willing to do that are not members of the church, you are willing to do because of what you believe, like in a work setting or some of these people that you mentioned before?
I think staying busy, and because I am a very busy person, because I get involved, as I said before, I love to get involved in the church as well, and I love to get involved. You know, it's a bit of zeal for life because of my beliefs in the plan of salvation and that mortality is a probationary period. So I'll do things and you know, I'll be at work and some people will say like, why do you do that? And it's like, well,
all this extra stuff.
Yeah. Like we had in 2022, the church brought 35 international delegates to a religious freedom conference in the UK for a week. And the week after was FSY for a week. And so when I heard that and they were like, Ben, do you want to come in and help take these delegates around Parliament and stuff like that? I was like, absolutely, yeah. Put me in, coach, you know.
You like to say yes.
Yeah, I just was like hungry to go through that opportunity and take that opportunity, and also knowing that it would be cool from a faith perspective to do that, and then serve at FSY. But I had to take 2 weeks of holiday, and I came back thinking like, oh, I could need a holiday from that now. But I don't know. When I think we're on Earth for a short time, and we get these things like, I've come to Utah for 6 days and trying to record a lot of podcasts and meet great people and enjoy conference and stuff. And it's like, I'm not the type of person that wants to go to Alicante in Spain and sit on the beach for a week.
Yeah.
It's just not me. I just want to be doing stuff, and I want to be, take all of these opportunities. So I think people would probably say they're surprised by that, because
why would you do extra?
It cause me burnout.
So take me back to the Modern Wisdom Show. What was that like from the beginning perception of members of the church to, how did it shift? Did it change, over time, but just by your, just you being you, right? When you first started, they didn't know that you were a member of the church when you first started, right?
No, yeah. Well, I'm pretty open about it. So it was an element, but it was cool because, so I joined at 150,000 subscribers. As a team, we took it to 4 million, 3.5 million subscribers.
In how much time?
So I joined 2021. So
Wow.
20, and I left. So 4 years.
Wow.
And, really made stuff. And we weren't optimizing for like clickbait and stuff. We really grinded to make a beautiful product.
To make them as good as you can, everyone, just to the next
Every
one.
single one, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Chris was so dedicated and just amazing podcasts. Really, no one will understand the commitment he put into his craft as an interviewer. Like, there's so much that people don't know about. There's an art to it. But anyway, it ended up that Chris was like talking to me, and I just often share, things about church, and if I was at the temple, maybe send a picture and stuff. And it got to the point where we had a tradition where every Christmas, when Chris would fly back to America to the UK, I'd take him to the cathedral, and we'd go to like festivals of lessons and carols at Christmas, and it was like our thing together, where it's like he's not a religious person, but he wanted to come to church with me.
Really?
Yeah, it was really good. And I said, we've got a stake conference, and I showed him the chapel it was at, and he was like, no, that's kind of an ugly church. I want to go to a beautiful one. So I didn't get him to go to our church because the building wasn't very nice. But
he was interested in the historical, but he went.
But but it was great because there were some misconceptions and
what were some of those?
Just funny cultural things, like we'd have a comedian on, and they'd talk about some funny kind of inappropriate rumors about what church members, and I'm sure you can interpret what I'm saying, but what they do before they're married to certain apparent loopholes that I'm sure no one has ever done, but it's a cultural thing that's linked to young members of the church. And just opportunities to kind of correct and say, that's just like a funny thing. It's not really a serious thing, and things, just correcting things here and there. And again, it was nothing major. Like, I'm not texting him voice messages or stuff where I'm sharing my testimony. It's just being good. It's just like showing that I'm trustworthy, showing that I'll work hard, going to church on Sunday. When we go on business trips, bringing my wife along, and we had a great trip to Vegas where we recorded with David Goggins.
Really?
And that was an amazing day meeting David Goggins. He was awesome.
You went out to
coolest.
Where'd you go to?
Vegas. We recorded in Vegas with David Goggins, and that was one of the best days of my life. Such a cool guy. But just the kind of like, I'm not going to go drinking with everyone. It's just those classic things that even in primary you say, like, I was invited to a birthday party on a Sunday. Just those basic things. But they really do have an impact, because it makes people stop and think, like.
Well, tell me that day you're gonna go. How did it go down? Like, give me an example of something like that. Like, what was it like?
With
like when you turned it down, you're just like, David Goggins is there.
We were in a casino. David Goggins wasn't here for that. This was after the podcast to kind of celebrate it. And everyone's like, let's celebrate. We just recorded with David Goggins. He's only doing 2 podcasts for his book, Joe Rogan and us, because he knows that we're doing really good stuff. So it was a really cool moment. And everyone, which is really normal. Like, I'm not judging them for doing that. Of course, like it's really normal. They celebrate, they go and drink and gamble in Vegas.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to hit now. And we were with some people that I really wanted to be friends with. Like, these are titans of what they're doing. And yeah, it was just a case of like, we're going to go now. And it, because I've already had experiences like that, because when you're in England, like house parties and drinking, it's a huge deal. So I had to grow up being the only member of the church in my school and all of that. So to be honest, I'm used to doing that. It's a normal thing to say, all right, I'm going to head off now. I'm not going to participate in this because this is my faith. I had this beautiful moment actually in a house party. It was after prom. It was a post-prom party, and my friends had invited me, and I was hesitant about going because I knew what they would do was just they would drink. That's the whole evening would just be drinking, and I didn't want to participate in that. Not that I was tempted, but I was just like, it's not fun being the only sober person hanging around with a house full of drunk people. And I got there, and on the table laid out for me was 4 bottles of Schlur. Do you know Schlur?
No.
Schlur
But they prepared it in advance for you.
They prepared it in advance, and Schlur is this Christmas drink that families have that is basically just, fizzy grape drink.
Like it's not alcoholic.
Non-alcoholic.
Interesting.
It's a fizzy grape drink. It's literally a soda, but it's like a non-alcoholic wine kind of thing.
But they spiked it. I'm just playing.
No.
They're like, got him. No.
Gotcha.
But they knew it in advance, and they were like,
I was so touched that I was like, I don't know if I got. And I didn't ask
You
for
didn't
anything,
ask
but
for
I
it,
went
yeah.
and they said, we got these for you because we still wanted you to, not be isolated from everyone. And I was just like, those are the fruits of just, sticking to your guns, because I could have quite easily said, I'll just have a drink, I can repent after, and you could have done that. And I just thought,
or I could go and just not drink.
Yeah. I'm just grateful for good friends who in that moment respected my faith. And again, it's just one of those things that if you work hard, if you're a good person, if you just try your best, and then, these are the blessings of that. You just have these wonderful little moments that when you reflect on them, they almost expand, and you think, gosh, what a sacred experience. What a little miracle. Just so grateful for them and for that experience. That's just a small thing, but it stayed with me.
Well, did he ever defend you? Was there any ever circumstances like that? Did it get to that point?
I can't think of an outright experience off the top of my head where he defended me, but it was always.
How did it shift from before to after? After he got the chance to know, that's what I'm really what I'm.
It was just about. There were just several. There were several moments where, in podcasts, it would be mentioned that there was one. You
could tell he respected you.
Yeah, and I was really grateful for that. There was one experience where he was interviewing the head of relationship science or something at Bumble or Hinge or one of these online dating sites, and they talk about marriage, and the woman was talking about. I'll have to send you the clip to this after. The woman was talking about how marriage is such a huge decision, and Chris says, well, think about the Mormons. My assistant Ben, he's married for time and all eternity. So if you think being married for 70 years is a big decision, then think about that. And just little things like that. When I was,
he paid attention and knew it must have meant something.
Yeah. So it's just cool to, in your sphere of influence, to see the fruits of you just kind of being open about your faith and not being afraid to talk about it and live it out unashamedly.
What happens if we don't do this? Like what do you think is at stake right now? Because on one scale, it's like, oh, we could go and make a podcast, which is not. There's nothing wrong to do this, right? To correct some of the narratives that are not in alignment with the truth.
Yeah.
But then also, just more specifically, if people don't really catch and understand this idea of their influence that they can have on people by just naturally being them and living the gospel, what happens if we don't do it?
If we don't do it, then people don't come to us when they do have an issue, because it's like, I've invited friends before to church and have downright said, I don't want to. Yeah, and that's kind of awkward. But that doesn't matter, because if one day they have something and they feel the need for more meaning in their life, they can Google it or whatever, or they can come to you because of how you live. And I think when I spoke about that girl, the example of her grandmother was the one that, 10, 11 years later, she's thought, yeah, I'd love to go to church again because of my grandmother's example. You know what I mean? That was 14 years later or whatever.
Yeah, it's a long game.
And we had an example where we baptized someone on my mission who the stake president was on a rugby team, and this guy had come to him and said, my mum's really ill, I'm having a really hard time, I just feel like I need to be closer to God. And I know from the way that you live your life that you know, you live that, and that's an important part of your life and your family. So can you come and can you help me with this? And he said, oh, well, I'm having the missionaries around for dinner tomorrow. Why don't you come and you can speak to them? And he got baptized, you know, and I think he's still active today. But that's what doesn't happen if you're not someone who lives out your faith. Because why would he come to you?
They're just going to Google it.
Yeah.
But can you imagine what it would be like if we did? How much of it, almost, you can't see it on a page, maybe. You can't collect the data directly. Maybe it's more, I don't want to say subjective. I mean, you can't really just look at it and be like, you can count the outcome. But can you imagine what it would be like if we all were willing to live what we believe and not just say what we believe, but to live like we believe? And you're saying they would come to us. And if there was like, or they just wouldn't even care. They'd be like, nah, that ain't true. That's not true. Yeah, because I know Ben, and I know that he's not like that. I've seen him, right?
And that's happened to me so many times.
It has.
People are ignorant about it. You know, that does happen where, you know, people are like, oh no, Ben's not like that. Whereas on Twitter, it's such a different element. So it's like, live out the faith. Live out your faith. And this is especially important, Stephen, at the moment, because the world is watching us.
They are.
And I think what the world has realized is that they've stopped listening to the people who say Mormons are a demonic cult, Mormons do this, because the actions are so different.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what Dave Butler and all of those guys organized, that crowdfunder to raise money for the family of the shooter that shot the church up.
Dave Butler
in Michigan.
did that.
Yeah, David Butler.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know he started it.
Well, there's a few David Butlers, I think, in the church.
Yeah. You're talking about David Butler from Don't Miss This?
No, the other one.
David Butler. Okay. I know David Butler has long hair.
Yes.
And he's on the Stick of Joseph a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick of Joseph David. Although the other Dave Butler's really nice.
Yeah.
But this, they kind of had a group chat and they organized this. And so you have the people that instigated it. And then you've got all the members who have written all these incredible messages on the crowdfunder.
Yeah.
And they've raised something at the moment.
A lot, like 300 or something, 300 million or something.
So yeah.
Not 300,000.
300,000.
300 million's a lot. But you read through the comments, you see, I know a guy, I know that, and you're seeing, I've seen a lot more people on social media that are starting to say like, look, man, I know people who are members of the church and they're good people. And that goes a long way. Do you understand?
Yeah. And there's that element that there's this great quote from Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
That Chris used to share a lot. Chris Williamson used to share a lot. And it really stuck with me. And it was he was walking into a crowd and the crowd was booing him. And he says to them, I can't remember which character it is. He says, your boos mean nothing to me. I've seen what makes you cheer.
Ooh.
Isn't that a great quote?
That is.
It's so profound. And so
hold up a second. What's the context that usually he'll share that quote?
He shares that in a sense of, who do you outsource your self-worth to? You're so worried, you're holding yourself back from achieving what you really want to because you're worried about what people think about you, but these people aren't thinking about you. Yeah. And in many cases, do you want to be liked by them? So when I see the kind of criticisms that we're getting, and I'm thinking, well, look at what we're doing. I don't care about your boos anymore because this is what you should be cheering about. And the people who cheer for this, those are the people that we want communion with. You know what I mean? And so that quote has really stuck with me. And it's, you know, seeing the response to these horrific events in Michigan has just really made me proud to be a Latter-day Saint, and the things that they're doing is like that's the camp I want to be in, and I'm proud to be in that camp. And when people are calling us demons or whatever, like, sure, I don't think I'm a demon.
Look at the fruit.
But,
I mean, the fruit.
Yeah, but it's like I no longer care, because if you're not willing to cheer with us and do good with us, then it's just words. So yeah,
fruit. We need more fruit.
Fruit. We need to synthesize the data that we're learning.
Yes, that's what I'm learning now. I mean, in a more clear, specific way, we need more. That's some of the most powerful evidence to me. Is people live that way. I was talking to Don Bradley the other day. He was talking about Martin Harris, and his brother Emmer Harris is related to President Oaks.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Talon H. Oaks Harris. That's what it comes from. Didn't that throw you off?
No.
And it's down the line through his mom down to Emmer Harris, which was Martin Harris's brother. There's so much to this.
Amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But they took Martin Harris. This is Don Bradley's research, and I think anyway. I'm not trying to take it, okay? But I just thought it was fascinating that they were gonna take Joseph Smith to court. They wanted Martin Harris to be the witness. Martin Harris was praying, asking, he wanted to see the plates to be a witness so that he could prove and have evidence. But I don't want to give away too much because it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. Basically, he's translating. He believes he was still one of the translators, and a lot of what he was translating and then synthesized and wanted to live is what he didn't need. He was like, I don't need the witness. And then he gets to the court and he's like, yeah, Joseph Smith. Basically God gave him the witness before he had to see the plates, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you see it, Joseph Smith sees the Lord, then he gives him the physical witness. You see this pattern over and over and over again. And whenever people see us living the gospel, the other evidence can speak for itself. It only solidifies what they already see as we live it, is what I'm learning from you today. I just want to paint a picture what this looks like. What do you feel like the world looks like, people choosing to do this? If they don't do it, they'll go to other sources and they'll believe it, right? They'll believe it when somebody says we're demonic, that we're a cult, and that, everybody's leaving the church. What does it look like when we live this way?
It's a powerful, confident body of saints, I think, because when we do live that way, look at the great things that we're able to do together. We don't know each other, but somehow we've teamed up together to do this amazing thing with the response to the Michigan thing. And I just think, what else can we do as a body of confident, powerful saints who are spiritually confident and who approach the throne of God with complete confidence, which is, I think, what those early saints had. That when they approached God, they approached him with great confidence because of the sacrifices that they were doing and the way that they were living and their desire to increase in holiness. And I say this to my quorum. I serve as elders quorum president at the moment. And I'm always saying every time we meet is what are we going to do from this lesson to increase in holiness? Because I know the time will come where we'll need to call upon God for stuff. And do we have the confidence to understand the way God speaks to us and how to move forward and how to, like I was saying before, how to endure difficulty? Do we know how to do that? Because I've gone through it without knowing the tools to do it, not being clear on it, and it was really difficult. And I don't want to do that again. So I think a world where we do really live what we're believing is one of great joy. It's one of great spiritual confidence, and it's one where we are very immune. We do not care what people think of us. We have no self-consciousness when it comes to how we are. It's just we know we're doing good, so let's just keep doing it. We don't care what they think. Join us or criticize us. We know what we're doing is right. We're on the right side of this. So I think that's what it looks like.
The baptismal covenant, to mourn with those that mourn, comfort those that stand in need of comfort, to be a witness at all times and in all things and in all places that we're in. I mean, if we keep doing that, like you're saying, I feel like that is the essence of it. It literally will change the world. It'll change the perspective, because the church is one thing, but what we want them to come to is Jesus Christ through the ordinances and the covenants you mentioned before, right? That's what brings the real joy that you mentioned, right? What
I think to add to that,
yeah.
kind of circling back to the beginning, is I was seeing that in the UK. I felt like we weren't very confident as a country and as Latter-day Saints, because we were taking in too much of this kind of narrative we were being fed that was incorrect and false, within an ulterior motive behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That people were leaving in droves, and that there was the church was declining rapidly. And so when they announced one of the temples, the Edinburgh Temple, I had a friend say to me, "Oh, I really didn't expect it, but it's given me such confidence." And I just think there is great power, and I see in the UK now, I see a very confident faith base where those criticisms and those antagonists, their power is being eradicated and quietened, and it's almost like a pat on the head and like, okay, thanks for your input. We're going to move ahead doing what we know is true and right, and it's an unstoppable force when it comes to that. But I had seen before that we were, I don't know, I got the general sense that we weren't feeling very confident. And people were saying there are prophecies of great growth in the church in Europe, but we're not seeing it. Like President Holland, President Ballard, and Elder Cook came together and they said, the great days of the church in Europe, not over, like they're coming. I think at the time, no one believed that. And now we're starting to feel it. And we're starting to stand up with our shoulders back. And it's wonderful. It's really great.
It just makes me think of this. Back to the fruit again. Was in Alma 32, what is he when he says, it's like, yeah, and now we will compare the word unto a seed. Now if ye give place that the seed may be planted in your heart, behold, if it is a true seed or a good seed, if you do not cast it out by your unbelief, that you will resist the Spirit of the Lord, behold, it will begin to swell within your breast, and when you feel these swelling motions, you will begin to say within yourselves, it must needs be that this is a good seed, or that the word is good. For it beginneth to enlarge my soul, yea, it beginneth to enlighten my understanding, yea, it beginneth to become delicious to me. Because of what you said, right? Of when we are being obedient to what God asks us to do, I mean, that's when it feels the most joy. But I want to, like, when you're 80 years old, right? I don't know, maybe we'll have some chip in our brain. I don't know. We'll live for 180,000 years. I'm just talking. When you're in the end of your time on earth, close to it, what do you hope that your posterity, what do you hope that they understand about your faith in Jesus Christ, and what will they know by how you lived?
I think I want my posterity. I look at President Nelson, and I think his posterity brings so much joy to him. And in the temple, we hear that phrase, and in the Bible, of like, take joy from your posterity, you know. And I think that's what I'd love to have, is a posterity that brings me great joy on a personal note. But I look to my great granddad and what everyone says of him, and says like he was really spiritual. He was really, you know, his faith was so important to him. And I just hope when I'm 80 and looking back that I'm a tired, rugged old man who's worn himself out, just constantly trying to... I would still love to have that zeal for life and for this probationary period, is my hope. And that, you know, I'm just keeping on pushing to do what I can do in my sphere of influence, and with the skills that I have and the influence that I have, to just keep pushing and keep encouraging others, and to have strong faith, so that, you know, my family and others around me are spiritually confident because of the way I'm living, you know. I think that'll be so important, especially as it's a wild world. Goodness knows what it'll be like when I'm 80.
Yeah.
We'll still be here. Who knows? But I hope that I can convey that zeal and the joy, but also the urgency that a knowledge of the plan of salvation brings, Like not just, oh, it's nice
It
that
brings
our
an
families will
urgency.
be together. Yeah, because mortality is a testing period, and make sure you're excited about that, not nervous about. Make sure you've revised for the test and you're acting it out. Because to me, knowing that this life is the time for men to prepare to meet God is really exciting, because it's like a challenge. Every day we kind of can reflect on that and repent and grow. So I hope we can continue that zeal, and I hope that I can convey that zeal to my family too, because I think casualness in the gospel will not work in the future. I think we can get away with it a bit now, but I don't think it's going to be something that works in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned Gen Z, about their life. I mean, it's almost like the electronic stuff didn't work. I know that in some of the research they showed that, right? During COVID, everybody turned to their, like, it didn't do anything. It was like cotton candy, it just melted. If everything disappeared from your career, right? The success, you've worked with these different people that have had so much success. What would be one truth that you would want the rising generation to know or understand?
That similar to what C.S. Lewis and Orwell learned in Till We Have Faces, is that Jesus Christ is the answer. It's not, don't go hunting for answers around other things, just focus on close communion with Jesus Christ and get a deep understanding of his atoning sacrifice and his atoning love. Because when you learn that someone loved you enough to do that, and also the actual fruit of that sacrifice, it'll change you every day. And the closer you are in communion with Jesus Christ, the more immune you will be to the rising concerns and temptations and rhetoric of the world. And you'll be fine. You'll be fine whatever happens, the closer you are in communion with him. And yeah, I think Gen Z are really impressive. I don't need to tell them that. I think they're figuring that out for themselves. The people leaving on missions now are so much more prepared than I was when I am. I look to them as examples because it's really impressive. So I'm excited for the future.
Yeah. Well, I believe and I know what you said is true, but don't take our word for it. It's up to you to go to God and find out for yourself. This is Stephen Jones. This is Let's Get Real. Until next time.